They fired her because she smelled like a farm, laughed as she packed her things and walked out. But a year later, she walked back in, as the new owner of the entire company. The same scent they mocked? Now it's the fragrance of success. Because sometimes, the soil they look down on is where greatness grows. This is Raw Tales Stories, where pain turns into power, and roots rise into crowns. Subscribe for more stories like this. Sometimes, success doesn't start in a boardroom. It starts in the dirt, the kind of dirt that stains your hands, feeds your soul, and reminds you where you came from. This is the story of Clara Johnson, the woman they fired for smelling like a farm. They thought that smell was dirt. They didn't know it was destiny. Sound of roosters crowing, goats bleating, soft sunrise music. Every morning before the city even wakes, Clara is already working. Boots in the mud. Hair wrapped in a scarf. Hands deep in the earth. Her small farm sits just outside Atlanta, a humble place her father built before he passed away. It's where she grows everything she loves: aloe, honey, shade plants, and herbs that smell like hope itself. She feeds her goats, hums an old gospel tune, and looks toward the horizon. The city skyline glows faintly in the distance. Clara, whispering, "One day, they'll see what this little farm can do." Then she washes her hands, puts on her second-hand blazer, and hops into her old truck, the one that always coughs twice before starting. Sound of engine sputtering, then starting. She drives into Atlanta, heading for the place she believes will change her life: Pure Aura Cosmetics, a sleek, glass-walled company that smells like money and perfection. Sound of city chatter, elevator dings, keyboards clicking. Inside Pure Aura, everything gleams: polished floors, spotless walls, and faces that wear smiles as sharp as glass. Clara walks in quietly, clutching her lunch in a small brown bag. Her coworkers, mostly young, stylish women in designer suits, glance at her shoes, her curls, her plain bag. They whisper. They always whisper. One of them, Ashley, sprays perfume loudly as Clara walks past. Another snickers. "Girl, what is that smell? Smells like goats or something." They laugh. Clara forces a smile, pretending not to hear. She takes her seat near the back. Her cubicle is small, her computer old. But her heart? Still full. Because she believes, if she works hard enough, she'll rise. Sound of chairs sliding, papers rustling, faint jazz office music. Later that morning, the staff gathers for a meeting. The air is tense, the CEO's coming down for a visit. Clara is nervous. She's been working for weeks on a presentation idea: a line of skincare products made with natural, farm-grown ingredients. When it's her turn to speak, she stands, voice trembling but hopeful. "Clara. Thank you. My proposal is called Pure by Nature. It's about connecting skincare with the purity of Earth." But before she can finish, Lauren Green, her manager, interrupts. Lauren's smile is cold, the kind of smile that cuts. "Lauren. Clara, honey, that's interesting. But maybe let's leave the farm life out of this one. We don't want our customers thinking of mud and goats, right?" Everyone chuckles. Lauren leans closer, lowering her voice but loud enough for others to hear. "Maybe use less farm and more perfume next time, okay?" Laughter fills the room. Clara's hands shake. Her chest burns. But she swallows the pain. She forces a soft smile and says quietly, "Yes, ma'am." Sound of elevator doors closing, silence. The next morning, Clara walks into work again, head held high despite the whispers. She places fresh flowers from her garden on her desk, hoping their scent will remind her of home. But just before lunch, she gets an email. Subject: Meeting with HR, 1 p.m. Her stomach twists. She walks into the small HR office where two people wait, the HR director and Lauren. The HR lady clears her throat. HR lady: "Clara, we've received a few complaints from your coworkers about your scent. It's been described as, earthy. Not appropriate for our office environment." Clara frowns. "My scent?" Lauren crosses her legs and smirks. It's nothing personal, Clara. It's just, we have a company image to maintain. The HR lady slides a paper across the table. Termination notice. HR lady. You'll receive your final paycheck in 2 weeks. Please return your badge and pack your belongings. For a long moment, Clara says nothing. Just silence. Then, quietly. You're firing me for smelling like where I come from? Lauren shrugs. Maybe it's just not a good fit. Soft, sad piano begins. Clara stands up, hands trembling, tears in her eyes, but she doesn't let them fall. She picks up her box of belongings, a few notebooks, a plant, and a jar of homemade lotion she once gifted Lauren. Lauren looks at it with a laugh. You can keep that. Sound of rain starting, distant thunder. Clara walks through the lobby, past curious faces and forced smiles. She steps outside into the rain, the city gray and cold. The water soaks her blazer, her hair, her dreams. But she doesn't break. She looks up at the sky and whispers through clenched teeth. One day, you'll remember this smell. Then she walks away, back toward her old truck, the one that smells of soil, rain, and hope. Music swells, emotional crescendo. Narrator voice steady, hopeful. That day, they thought they threw away a farm girl who didn't belong. But what they didn't know, they just planted the seed of a legend. Music fades out, thunder rolls softly. Narrator calm, emotional. The city lights didn't look the same that night. They weren't glowing anymore. They were just cold. Clara drove home in silence. The rain had turned the dirt road to mud, but she didn't care. Every bump, every splash, was a reminder of where she came from, and where she was heading, even if she didn't know it yet. Sound of crickets, frogs, and a truck engine turning off. Clara stepped out of her truck, heels sinking into the wet soil. The farm was quiet, only the soft bleating of goats, and the whisper of the wind in the trees. She walked to the barn, hung up her soaked blazer, and sat on an overturned bucket. Her hands, once soft from typing, were covered in dirt again. For the first time in years, she cried. Not the kind of crying that asks for pity, but the kind that empties a soul. Clara, whispering. They fired me, for being me. She looked around at the old jars of honey, the herbs hanging from the ceiling, and the rows of handmade soaps her mother once crafted. Then she noticed something she hadn't in a while. Her mother's old wooden sign, half buried in dust. It read, "Everything good starts from the ground." Clara touched the words gently, then smiled through her tears. Maybe that's where I start again. Soft piano joins the background, hopeful yet delicate. The next morning, Clara woke before dawn. She began mixing honey, shea butter, and aloe, her late father's recipe for healing cracked skin. Her kitchen smelled like earth and sunshine. She poured the mixture into small jars and scribbled on each lid. Rooted. That's what she decided to call it, Rooted Skincare. Because everything she was, her farm, her pain, her roots, was in it. Days turned to weeks. Clara sold a few jars to her neighbors, who loved the scent and texture. Then the local farmers' market. Then, one weekend, a small boutique in downtown Atlanta called and said, "We've had people asking for your farm lotion. Can we stock it?" Her eyes widened. That was the moment the seed cracked open. Music fades into a slower, heavier rhythm. But dreams cost money, and Clara didn't have much left. Her savings were almost gone. The farm was in need of repair. And she was behind on her bills. One night she sat at her kitchen table surrounded by empty jars and unpaid notices. Her friend Monica, a local schoolteacher, dropped by. "Monica. Clara, you can't do this alone. You need help." "Alone, maybe?" Clara, shaking her head. "No bank's gonna lend money to a fired farm girl making lotion in her kitchen." Monica leaned forward. "Then show them what they can't see." That night, Clara created a small website on her old laptop. She took pictures of her products with a borrowed phone. The photos weren't perfect, but they were honest, hands covered in soil, jars glowing in morning light. She uploaded them with the tagline, "Sparkles. Made by hands that know the earth. Within a week, the first online orders came in, one from Georgia, one from Texas, and one from New York. It wasn't much. But it was something. Music swells softly, hopeful. One morning, Clara got an email that made her heart stop. Subject: Feature request, Green Beauty Weekly. It was from an online magazine that promoted eco-friendly products. They'd seen her photos on Instagram and wanted to feature her story. Clara couldn't believe it. She stayed up all night rewriting her story, from farm girl to founder. A week later, her feature went live. The woman who turned her farm into a skincare dream. Orders flooded in. She sold out of every jar she had, twice. The same people who once laughed at her farm smell were now paying triple for it. The scent that got her fired was now her signature. Light jazz and upbeat rhythm fade in. Months later, Clara was running a small workshop behind her barn. Her brand-rooted skincare had grown from kitchen jars to national demand. She hired 3 women from her town, women who had once struggled to find work. She taught them how to mix, pour, and label. Every package left the barn with a note that read, "Sheaf of rice. From the ground we rise." The local news picked up her story next. Then, the Atlanta Business Journal. People began calling her the farm queen of beauty. Still, when she looked in the mirror, Clara didn't see fame. She saw the woman who walked out in the rain, and didn't let the mud define her. Tone softens, mysterious, quiet hum. One morning, Clara received a message on LinkedIn. It was short, polite, and unexpected. "Hello Clara, this is Lauren Green, former HR manager at Pure Aura. I'd love to connect and perhaps discuss partnership opportunities. Your story is truly inspiring." Clara stared at the screen. Her heart thumped. That name, the same woman who laughed when she was fired. She didn't reply. Not yet. But she smiled, that kind of slow, knowing smile that comes when life finally turns the wheel back your way. Narrator steady tone. The farm girl they mocked was now the woman they wanted to work with. But Clara wasn't done yet. Music grows in strength, emotional and victorious. Because when the roots are deep, storms can't shake you. Soft instrumental music fades in, thoughtful piano blended with low strings. Narrator slow, reflective tone. Success has a strange scent. Sometimes it smells like roses. And sometimes it smells like the soil they once laughed at. Months had passed since Clara's life had changed. Her skincare brand, Rooted, was no longer a small dream on her farm. It was a movement, spreading through beauty stores, online boutiques, and even celebrity Instagram posts. The farm that once broke her back was now the heartbeat of her empire. But the past wasn't done with her yet. Sound of morning birds, coffee being poured. Clara sat at her small kitchen table, laptop open, checking orders. Her inbox buzzed with new customer messages, shipment updates, and partnership requests. Then she saw it. Subject: Business collaboration, Pure Aura Cosmetics. Her breath hitched. The name made her stomach tighten. She clicked it. Dear Ms. Johnson, we at Pure Aura have been following your incredible journey with Rooted Skincare. We believe a partnership could be mutually beneficial, and would love to discuss acquisition possibilities. Best, Lauren Green, VP of Brand Operations, Pure Aura Cosmetics. Clara stared at the screen for a long time, her coffee untouched. Lauren Green, the same woman who once mocked her. Farm smell. She leaned back in her chair, smiled slightly, and whispered, "Oh, now you smell money." Headphone scene 2, the call. Phone ringing sound. Light tension music builds softly. Clara decided to answer the call when it came later that week. Lauren's voice came through the line, smooth, confident, and rehearsed. Lauren. Clara! I'm so thrilled we finally got in touch. I've been following your success. Just incredible what you've built. Clara's tone was calm, measured. Clara. Thank you? You sound surprised. Lauren laughed lightly, ignoring the sting. Lauren. Well, success can come from unexpected places. Listen, we're very interested in acquiring your brand. Pure Aura wants to bring Rooted under our luxury line. Clara said nothing for a moment. She let the silence sit, heavy and intentional. Then she asked, "Why now, Lauren? You didn't think the farm smell fit your brand before?" Lauren's voice hesitated. Lauren. Oh, Clara, that was a misunderstanding. Office politics, you know how it goes. But now, we see your products have a certain authenticity. Consumers love that. Clara smiled faintly, her tone cool but sharp. Clara. Authenticity. That's a fancy way of saying you want what you threw away. Lauren chuckled nervously. Lauren. We'd like to set up a meeting, in person. Our CEO would love to meet you. Clara. Sure. I'll come by. Music fades to a deep, suspenseful hum. Headphone scene 3, the return to the glass building. Sound of city traffic, elevator dings, heels clicking. The day of the meeting, Clara walked through the same glass doors that once watched her leave in shame. This time, she wasn't wearing her old blazer. She wore a sleek cream suit, her natural curls shining under the lobby lights. Employees turned to look, whispers spreading again. But this time, it wasn't mockery. It was all. The receptionist blinked in recognition. Receptionist. Ma'am, you look familiar. Clara, smiling. I should. I used to clean that coffee spill over there. Soft chuckle in the background. She took the elevator up. The mirrored walls reflected not just her face, but how far she'd come. When the doors opened, Lauren was waiting with her trademark smile. Same red lipstick. Same tone that used to make Clara feel small. Not anymore. Lauren. Clara! You look stunning. Come in, please. We're so proud of what you've built. Clara walked in slowly, scanning the room, remembering the faces that once laughed at her. Headphone scene 4, the meeting table. Sound of papers rustling, chairs sliding. The CEO, Mr. Caldwell, extended a hand. A tall, silver-haired man with a voice like authority. Mr. Caldwell. Ms. Johnson, I've heard amazing things. Rooted is a brand that's shaking up the industry. Clara. Thank you, sir. It's been quite a journey. Clara. Mr. Caldwell, I appreciate the offer. But I didn't build Rooted to fit under an umbrella that once left me out in the rain. The room went quiet. Lauren's fake smile twitched. Lauren. Clara, maybe you're letting emotions. Clara, interrupting. No. I'm letting memory do its job. Soft music shift, power tone builds. She opened her folder and slid a document across the table. A proposal. Clara. I'm not here to sell my company. I'm here to buy yours. The silence was heavy. Lauren froze. Mr. Caldwell blinked. Mr. Caldwell. I'm sorry? Clara. You heard me. Pure Aura's market value has been dropping for 2 years. Investors are nervous. Your eco-line flopped. But Rooted, we're profitable, debt-free, and expanding. She looked at Lauren. Clara. You fired me for smelling like the earth. Now you'll answer to the woman who owns it. Lauren stammered. Lauren. See, Clara, that's absurd. Clara. Is it? My attorney already made an offer. Check your inbox. Phone vibration sound, papers shuffle. Mr. Caldwell looked at his phone. His jaw tightened. Mr. Caldwell. Well, this is unexpected. Clara. Unexpected things grow in good soil, sir. Music swells, triumphant, cinematic. Clara stood, straightened her jacket, and offered a handshake. Clara. I'll give you time to consider. But don't take too long, I've got roots spreading fast. She turned and walked out, head high, heart calm. The same lobby, the same smell of perfume and glass, but this time, it smelled like victory. The whispers followed her again, but now they sounded different. Respect. Curiosity. Ah. As she stepped outside, the sunlight hit her face. She took a deep breath, the air filled with the scent of soil and blooming flowers. The scent that once cost her everything was now the fragrance of her empire. Narrator: steady, emotional tone. Sometimes the very thing they mock you for becomes the reason they remember your name. The morning sun painted the city in gold as Clara's black SUV glided into the parking lot of Glenview Essentials, the same company that humiliated her a year ago. Only this time, she wasn't there for a shift. She was there to own it. Employees gathered near the front doors, whispering as they watched her step out in a cream power suit, confidence radiating with every movement. The familiar scent of lavender oil and farm soil lingered lightly on her skin, the same scent that got her fired. But this time, nobody dared to mock it. She walked through the glass doors, her heels clicking against the marble floor, a rhythm of redemption. "Good morning, Miss Reynolds," stammered Tina, the same HR assistant who once escorted her out. "Good morning, Tina," Clara replied calmly. "You can call me Mrs. Reynolds, owner and CEO." Inside the executive boardroom sat Mr. Grant, the man who fired her. He rose to his feet, pale and nervous. "Clara, I mean Mrs. Reynolds, I didn't expect." She cut him off gently. "I didn't either, Mr. Grant. But life has a funny way of turning tables, doesn't it?" She walked to the head of the table and placed a file down. "I've acquired Glenview Essentials through Reynolds Organics. We'll be restructuring immediately." Grant's voice trembled. "So, what happens to me?" She looked him in the eyes, her tone steady. "You're free to stay, if you can handle working under the woman who smelled like farm." He swallowed hard, nodding. The power dynamic had flipped, completely. Scene 3. Redefining the company. Days later, Clara stood before her new staff. Posters of diversity, sustainability, and fairness lined the walls. The company that once mocked her roots was now rebranded as Earthkind Essentials. She told her story openly, of the field she grew up in, the vegetables she harvested at dawn, and how the smell of the farm was not shame, but legacy. Tears welled in some eyes as she said, "I was fired because I smelled like where I came from. But now, that smell keeps thousands of families employed. If you ever doubt yourself, remember, roots don't make you less. They make you strong." Applause erupted across the room. Later, Mr. Grant quietly approached her office. "I wanted to apologize," he said. "I let prejudice make decisions for me. You didn't deserve that." Clara looked at him thoughtfully. "Apology accepted, Grant. Just make sure no one else goes through what I did." He nodded, sincerely this time. "I'll make sure of it." As he left, she smiled faintly, knowing that forgiveness, too, was a power move. Weeks later, Clara visited her family farm. Her mother sat on the porch, watching her daughter pull up in the same SUV. "Mama," she said, kneeling by her, "I did it. I bought the company that fired me." Her mother's eyes filled with pride. "I told you, baby. The smell of the farm is the smell of success. Don't ever wash it off." Clara looked out over the golden fields and whispered, "They called it dirt. I call it gold." As the camera panned out, soft music played, her story complete, her dignity restored. "Sometimes, what they reject in you is exactly what will raise you." She walked out of those doors humiliated, and walked back in as the boss. She cut him off gently. "I didn't either, Mr. Grant. But life has a funny way of turning tables, doesn't it?" She walked to the head of the table and placed the file down. "I've acquired Glenview Essentials through Reynolds Organics. We'll be restructuring immediately." Grant's voice trembled. "So, what happens to me?" She looked him in the eyes, her tone steady. "You're free to stay, if you can handle working under the woman who smelled like farm." He swallowed hard, nodding. The power dynamic had flipped, completely. Scene 3. Redefining the company. Days later, Clara stood before her new staff. Posters of diversity, sustainability, and fairness lined the walls. The company that once mocked her roots was now rebranded as Earthkind Essentials. She told her story openly, of the field she grew up in, the vegetables she harvested at dawn, and how the smell of the farm was not shame, but legacy. Tears welled in some eyes as she said, "I was fired because I smelled like where I came from. But now, that smell keeps thousands of families employed. If you ever doubt yourself, remember, roots don't make you less. They make you strong." Applause erupted across the room. Later, Mr. Grant quietly approached her office. "I wanted to apologize," he said. "I let prejudice make decisions for me. You didn't deserve that." Clara looked at him thoughtfully. "Apology accepted, Grant. Just make sure no one else goes through what I did." He nodded, sincerely this time. "I'll make sure of it." As he left, she smiled faintly, knowing that forgiveness, too, was a power move. Weeks later, Clara visited her family farm. Her mother sat on the porch, watching her daughter pull up in the same SUV. "Mama," she said, kneeling by her, "I did it. I bought the company that fired me." Her mother's eyes filled with pride. "I told you, baby. The smell of the farm is the smell of success. Don't ever wash it off." Clara looked out over the golden fields and whispered, "They called it dirt. I call it gold." As the camera panned out, soft music played, her story complete, her dignity restored. "Sometimes, what they reject in you is exactly what will raise you." She walked out of those doors humiliated, and walked back in as the boss. It was exactly 1 year since Clara bought Glenview, now Earthkind Essentials. The company had transformed from a toxic workplace into a national leader in sustainable beauty and wellness. The air inside the headquarters buzzed with energy, employees of all backgrounds, from farmhands to chemists, all working together. A sign at the entrance read, "We honor where we come from, because that's where greatness grows." Clara stood by the window of her corner office overlooking the city, the same skyline she once thought she'd never belonged to. Her assistant knocked gently. "Ma'am, the press is ready for your interview." She smiled, picked up her mother's old woven straw hat, and whispered, "Let's show them what farm girls can do." Scene 2. The interview that changed everything. In the studio lights of a national morning show, the host leaned forward curiously. "Clara Reynolds, you were once fired for smelling like a farm. How does it feel owning the same company now?" Clara's laughter filled the room, warm, confident, unbothered. "It feels poetic," she said. "I used to apologize for where I came from. Now my company celebrates it. The smell of the soil is success to me, because it reminds me that nothing grows without getting a little dirty first." The host smiled. "That's powerful. What do you want young women, especially black women, to take from your story?" Clara looked straight into the camera. "Never hide your roots. The world might not understand them, but one day they'll be your brand." The audience erupted in applause. The clip went viral overnight. #FarmToCEO became a nationwide hashtag. Scene 3. A visit from the past. Later that week, a man in a worn-out jacket appeared at the front desk of Earthkind. It was James, a former janitor from Glenview, one of the few who had treated Clara with kindness back then. "Ma'am," he said nervously, "I don't know if you remember me. I used to mop the floors on your shift." Clara's eyes softened. "Of course I remember, James. You told me not to let their words get to me." He nodded, smiling shyly. "I never thought I'd be shaking the CEO's hand." Clara handed him a folder. "You're not just shaking the CEO's hand. You're joining our operations team. We reward loyalty here." Tears filled his eyes. "You're giving me a second chance." She smiled. "Because someone once took mine, and I learned how to take it back." Scene 4. Giving back. Months later, Clara stood at a university auditorium, speaking to hundreds of young students. Behind her was a banner. The Clara Reynolds Foundation for Rural Girls in STEM. She told them her story, from picking crops under the sun to running an empire. "Every seed starts small," she said. "But if you water it with hard work, one day, it'll grow into something no one can ignore." The crowd erupted into applause. Her speech was shared across platforms, inspiring millions. A young girl from the audience ran up to her after the talk and said, Miss Clara, I live on a farm too, and I want to smell like it forever. Clara knelt, smiling through tears. Then, baby, you'll grow into greatness. Scene 5. Peace on the farm. The story closed where it began, back at the family farm. Clara walked barefoot across the soil, feeling the earth between her toes. Her mother was gone now, but her voice lived on in every breeze. She knelt by the garden and whispered, "Mama, we did it. The world finally smelled what you always did, success." The camera panned out slowly, showing the vast land, now dotted with greenhouses marked Earthkind Training Farm, where local women learned sustainable farming. As the sun dipped behind the horizon, Clara stood tall, her silhouette golden against the field she once called too small. Now it was the foundation of her empire. They said she smelled like the farm. But that scent carried her farther than their perfume ever could. She turned rejection into revolution, and her roots into riches. This is Raw Tales Stories, where pain grows into power, and where every ending blooms from the soil of struggle. Subscribe for more stories like this, stories that remind you, never be ashamed of where you started, because that's exactly where your story begins.